What it means to be coloured is something we, as filmmakers, have been trying to answer.
We decided to go back to our families to help us by asking them what being coloured means to each of them.
These are their stories.
So I'm coloured by definition. What does this mean?
I don't quite understand exactly what coloured means. I think for a long time I assumed it meant that we didn't really fit in anywhere.
Sometimes I used to ask myself, why must I be coloured? I did ask myself that.
Yeah.
Why was I made to be a coloured?
I can't change my colour now, I'm a coloured. And I'll stay a coloured.
People come to you, maybe even your friends, and they feel comfortable enough to be like, oh yeah, Joe. And it's like, I've never ever said my name was Joe. My name is Joe.
The word coloured has become a sticker to say you're a second class citizen.
My grandfather, Papa, is 87 and he lives in Bonteheuwel.
If you cut it like that off, man, take the middle part off. Then we got a notice here by Trem Road that we have to get out there in the apartheid area, in the apartheid. And we got a place here in Bonteheuwel. Yeah.
What did the notice say in the letter that they sent? As Papa
And
remember?
such a time we have to be out, and a date is on there. That time we must be out. The place is ready here in Bonteheuwel for you and all that and so on. You got to stay here in this house here. You got to stay here. And they say, can't you give me a place nearer to Cape Town? So they say, no, man, I can't give you a place nearer to Cape Town. Hey, lady, I didn't ask you to put me in Bonteheuwel.
Yeah.
You put me in Bonteheuwel. Kijk, of coloured, het was niet zo bij vorige tijd. Was het maar altijd 28 druk geweest. Maar nu kan het was niet meer was 28 druk, was het nou. Was het nou even op.
My maar Johanna is 72 and lives in Rondebosch.
Oh, Robyn. Just look at that.
Okay.
You know, Lauren had a little dressy like that too. When I was much younger, I used to do nursing, but that's what you call auxiliary nursing. Like you see, well, let me tell you, there it started, but it didn't really affect me much. We weren't so privileged. We can only do that auxiliary nursing where we looked after people, cleaned them, washed them, fed them, took the temperatures, and other than that, cleaning the wards. Sometimes I used to ask myself, why must I be coloured? I did ask myself that.
Yeah.
Why was I made to be a coloured? Joe Poppies.
Give me that album.
Yes, Joe Poppies, yes.
Show us more. Where?
That's Robyn, and that's Joe Paula. I never told my children they were coloured. I think we just knew, all of us knew that we were coloured.
But how do you think you just know that? Like how
We
do you-
just know that because we all spoke the same language and all lived in the same areas. There were never any whites around us. It was like a no thing going into a white area at the time.
My auntie B, Ma's daughter, is 45 and teaches at Simonstown School.
Mostly when I was very young, I was confused because up until the age of about 6 or 7, I really believed that everyone was the same and we all looked the same because I lived in a community where I saw people only that looked or resembled me. And I'll never forget one afternoon, my granddad had someone coming around to his house who had fixed the electricity or something that had gone wrong. And it was a white man, and I got such a huge fright. I thought, oh my God, what is this? Some sort of an alien. Honestly, I will never forget the first time I saw somebody who looked different from me. Up until then, I honestly thought that the world consisted only of people that looked like me because this is how good government was in keeping our races separate. Is that I didn't think people existed that looked anything other than like myself.
Papa ever tell Papa's children that they are coloured? Did they ever ask?
No, they never asked, but I think they know. They know. Like Christopher.
Apparently very poor between Justenburg, Vlakte and the R300. So if you're heading out in that direction, maybe just want to switch on your headlights and make sure you stick to a safe following distance. I'll have more details for you just after 7:30.
Depends on the thing.
If hopelessness did a sound.
My uncle Chris, Papa's son, is 54 and he teaches at Arcadia High School in Bonteheuwel.
So I think that the first thing is that your parents, because of their history also, they refer to you as to say that you're a colored, and you're not a black or not a white, but you're a colored. Now that is where it comes from. So if I must delve back into history, I might just think it might be the first time when my parents could converse with me and say, listen here, you're a colored, you're not a white, you're not a black.
My dad had this very crude joke that he'd make, and this was probably again the stirrings of my consciousness that not everyone looked the way that I did, because my dad would make this joke that some of his kids were white and that because myself and your mom were darker skinned, there was this one guy that delivered the milk and he was much darker than the rest of us, and my dad's joke was, which I choked on, was that we were probably his children, the milkman's children, because we were darker and we resembled him more than what we resembled my dad, who, as you know, back then especially, he was quite fair. He looked more like a white person.
And Ma's pretty dark.
Yes. But that was just one of his jokes. But when you're young, you don't get that joke. It just kind of chokes you somewhere.
Yeah, so how did you feel about that joke?
Well, I realized after the fact that it probably made me feel a deep sense of insecurity. The fact that that joke always made me feel like we didn't fit in with the rest of the family because they were all not as affected by the sun as what myself and your mom were. So it did. But you don't realize it while you're growing up. Only when you're older you realize, okay, that did actually impact on your self-esteem a little bit. But then you learn to deal with it. You learn to overcome it.
How do you think now, looking back, how do you think it impacted your self-esteem?
I think it always made me feel inferior. It always then made me compare the way people looked. But I think I was also okay with the fact that we looked different and yet we were one family. And I think that's probably, in a sense, in a weird kind of way, that made it easier for me to deal with people that were like so-called whites.
Yes.
Do you think there's a change over the different generations for what it means?
Yeah, there's definitely a change for the different generations. Because you find that the older generation actually firmly believed, because they grew up in the apartheid system, that they firmly believe that the term colored is a term that needs to be used for people that is of color.
Kita galjoen.
Galjoen, die kan doen met een galjoen. Yes, my mom was a colored. I was never European. I was a colored all the time.
But did someone tell Papa, or did Papa just know? How did Papa?
No. I know I was a colored.
Did your mommy ever tell you, or your daddy ever tell you that you were colored? Like how? When was the first time that you realized that you were colored?
I don't think they ever spoke to us about race.
Yeah.
They were even more down to earth and satisfied than what my generation was, let me tell you that.
Yeah.
They were even more satisfied, yes. If you didn't know any better, that they could be better for you, then you would be happy, Robyn. But as time goes on, people learn more and more things, and then they become so dissatisfied, and that's when they start complaining and finding that life's just not fair.
You find that the new generation, some of them also have blurred the boundaries, because some of them don't like to be referred to as coloreds. They want to be referred to as people, and as a free people, they don't want to be put into a compartments. You are black, you are white, and you are colored.
Jo, my cousin, is 20 and she's studying law at Stellenbosch University.
I associate myself with being a human being, and I I'm not a color. I'm not a color. I'm not denying that I'm culture, that have a certain lineage and that I've come from certain people. I'm not denying that. Obviously, those are historical facts, but I'm also saying that what color they were doesn't define who I am today.
Then also the new generation is also, or the younger generation also that haven't gone through the pains of apartheid. They don't really know about the color division that actually existed before. Because most of the people are growing up together with no baggage as such, where a white is considered more than a colored, or a colored is considered more than a black, and vice versa. So I would say yes, there's quite a difference if you go through the generations as to what the idea of or the concept of color, where it comes from, and the feelings and the bad issues that is actually connected to that. I think that is, and as we move into time, that is going to slowly pass away in our situation.
Right.
Thank you.
Good.
My cousin Jason is 21 and he studies physiotherapy at UCT.
I feel as because I was born in the post-apartheid era, color wasn't ever a big thing in my life because I went to a multicultural school. It was white people, black people, and it never hit me until I eventually got to high school when I had to fill in my application form, and I saw we had to give a race. I was like, "Yo, this is strange." It never ever came across to me as really being important. And then obviously when I went to university, I had to fill in the same thing again. I just said that I'm colored. Only up until then, the whole being colored thing only hit me. It wasn't something that was ever really important to me, if I'm completely honest, because I'm just feel myself as a person.
I don't quite understand exactly what colored means. I think for a long time I assumed it meant that we didn't really fit in any way. I listen to my kids and they proudly tell me that they colored, and I resent that, because then we just playing right into the hands of the apartheid government by putting ourselves into a certain box, because that's essentially what they wanted to do, was to keep us separate from white people and even from black people for that matter. So please, we will continue with the Merchant of Venice. He has no idea where his ships currently are. Thou wilt not only lose the forfeiture, but touched with human gentleness and love. So he's appealing to Shylock to show a bit of humanity and love to this poor merchant. Forgive a moiety of the principle. I consider myself to be a real person.
Oh. What do you mean by that?
A real person who can feel and think for myself. A person who can connect with other people. I don't think of myself as being a particular color. When I think about Beulah, I don't see a color. I think if I did see a color, then I'd start thinking of myself as being separate, or someone that could be placed in a particular class or a particular group. And I'd like to think that by virtue of my humanity, I can overlook the obvious color of my skin. It's not that I'm not aware of the racial divide that still exists. It's just that I'm less bothered by it now than when I was 6 years old.
I got picked up on almost my 21st birthday.
You got what?
On this, my 20th birthday.
You got what? I think, or rather I hope, that it creates a greater awareness in Jo of where her place is in this world, because she can compare my parents' attitudes with regard to being a colored with my attitude, and she can try to reconcile it with what her perception is and what her reality is. So I'd like to think that she has that added benefit?
I think I was fortunate in that I grew up not being directly confronted with my otherness. Like I grew up in a setting where people looked like me, people sounded like me, so it wasn't a question of, oh, but you're so different. I think you become more socially aware when you're older. I think maybe what I meant when I said when I was younger, I wasn't confronted by my otherness, is that in an introspective way, I also wasn't confronted by my otherness.
So elaborate on that a bit. What do you mean by in an introspective way?
When I became older and more mature, I'm still getting older and becoming more mature. You get to become more introspective about your social position, about social ideas. And I think now that I can recognize that I can be perceived as other, I reject that notion because I don't want to be classified as a race, because I don't believe in race. We are not a single, uniform, biological thing.
We enjoy camping so much, and we enjoy 4x4ing. And it's from experience, I can tell it's not a colored thing. And when we go on holiday and people see us and they'll be like, but you guys are colored, like colored people don't do this. And from that I got the label that colored people don't enjoy camping, going off-road, enjoying the outdoors. But obviously that's not so, because we colored and we enjoy it, we enjoy the bits, we do it every year. And that's the example we got when we were away. My father, well, who is in this interview, you saw him, he's colored. And we were by the petrol station in the game park, and these white people got all upset with my father because he wasn't putting in petrol for them. But I mean, we were on holiday there, so why did they have to put in petrol for them? So that's the same perception about how people view colored people and what they do and what they don't do. It didn't take much of it, but I think because of his experience, him knowing, and like we usually don't see other people of our skin color, and then that's why I didn't feel as moved as maybe if I would feel if I was in a petrol station, maybe in my hometown, because there's always all kinds of people there.
I think people have certain prejudices when someone classes you in a certain group or whatever, they have prejudices associated with that class or with that group. And maybe I've been defensive about certain stereotypes with the association of colored, like your accent. When people come to you, maybe even your friends, and they feel comfortable enough to be like, oh yeah, Joe. And it's like, I've never ever said my name was Joe. My name is Joe. Like I don't appreciate that stereotype.
I think colored people are loud, abrupt, always drawing attention to themselves. But then again, I'm guilty of that because I do that all the time. But at the same time, I've seen people of other races do the same thing. So it's very difficult to put that stereotypes to a colored group, and maybe 5 minutes later you can walk down the road and you'll see a group of white people doing the exact same thing. And that's what I find strange, because, well, that's what I find, is that when a bunch of colored people do it, and then people just kind of accept it as normal, like that's how they go on. But usually when you get a group of white people and then they go on like that, and people will be like, oh, they're white, why are they going on like that? They usually don't go on like that.
I think definitely at university, when it's so competitive here as well, when people look at you and they're kind of like, oh, do you deserve to be here, or did you get here because of your BEE status? When we had a discussion in the beginning of first year, which my first year last year, we had kind of like it became a discussion about entrance into university, and this one girl made a comment which was completely offensive, and she said, oh, one day you won't even be able to trust your doctor because of the quota system at universities. And I felt particularly offended by that, because I'm part of a quota as well, as defined of, being part of a BEE class. And I feel completely competent enough to be here. You know, like sometimes you feel like people have a prejudice against you for sitting in the same classroom as them because you think maybe they feel you inadequate. But obviously that's my perception as well.
If I am loud, I draw a whole bunch of attention to myself. I fit all these colored stereotypes. No, I couldn't say it makes me proud, but it makes me proud to be who I am. Not so to say that I am just a colored person, because one of my good friends is white and he can do the exact same thing as me, but that doesn't mean that he should be a colored.
I definitely notice that I can identify that there's a cultural association within South Africa of what a colored person is or what type of community a colored person comes from. But I don't appreciate being defined in that category, because I'm not a category. I'm not something you can place in a box and label. I'm not something that, you know, I'm not Joe. I'm Joe Paula. I'm a person. There are many elements to me besides me being mixed race.
The definition of colored is that you're not black, right? And you're not white. So it's this negative way of defining it. You were neither.
That you are nothing. That you're nothing, yes.
So, and did you ever feel like
But I'm not going to make myself feel that way. No. Because we always try to strive for the better and do our best.
I think that I just have to accept that where I come from is a place of that part of my history is oppression, and that where I am today is because people were slaves, people were racially defined, even though I don't associate myself with being a slave or being racially defined. That's still part of my culture, that's still part of my heritage.
To me, at the end of the day, it's a racial term. It's a term of slur also, because when people usually use the term when they want to belittle a group. They say, okay, you are coloreds, you are blacks, in the tone that you are no good and you can't really achieve something in life. And yeah, that is the reason why I would say that the term colored, it is something that we must try to put behind us. Yes.
So I feel like because if we still brand ourselves, we still kind of value ourselves less as what we actually are. So if I say, no, I'm colored, he's white, to me it's like I'm saying to myself, no, I'm not worth as much as he's worth, when really, in reality, we both people, we can both achieve the same things.
I can't see any numbers here on the white. It's only your skin is white. But the things we do is not all not the same. And what do you think?
No, it
it's
is.
only the skin that changes it. That you are now colored and you are white, but you are the same. You cut you open, you've got the same blood too.
Ons is maar almal net mens is not intended to answer what being colored means for everyone. This film is rather meant to start a conversation that we have never had with our families before.
We're not sure whether we reject the colored label, but we do believe, like our family has mentioned, that we will never only be one thing. We will never only be colored. And beyond that, what colored means will be an ongoing negotiation amongst ourselves.